Hello there, friends. Let's talk about some transformations. All right, so got a bunch of problems on the right, and let's talk about some stuff on the left. I'm gonna zoom in. All right, so in front of you, you should see this crazy function with A's, B's, C's, and D's, pluses, minuses, and even a square. Now, this is just a generic function that I decided to make up. This type of transformations, they apply to any kind of function. And I'm going to give you several examples of that in the problems that we'll take a look at on the right-hand side. But for now, I have these 4 steps in front of you. Now, these are the steps in if you're graphing or transforming an actual graph or like a set of points, this is the order in which you should apply these transformations. So that's how we'll talk about them. That's how we'll order them. So then it's not, you have to remember a specific order. That's how we're going to always talk about it. And hopefully that it sticks naturally. Okay, all right, let's do this. Okay, first things first, we have horizontal shifts. Recall that horizontal means left and right. You find these horizontal shifts right there. Okay, now horizontal shifts are quite weird, and this is why. When you see a plus C, that's actually left. And when you see a minus C, that's actually to the right. And when you're going to the left, you're subtracting, which is the opposite of the sign you see, and when you're going right, you're adding. So, very strange, but that's just how it is. Okay, next we have stretches and compressions. Now, these are very funky, and we'll talk about them in greater detail. Stretches or compressions happen in these 2 places. And we'll talk about what's a vertical compression, what's a horizontal compression, etc. as the examples pop up. I didn't give myself enough room here. And that's because I am including in the video description what I call a transformation cheat sheet in case you would like extra little details to look at so you don't have to keep rewatching this video, or maybe it's just a tool that you want to download and use for yourself. Okay, next we have reflections. Reflections happen either in front of the X or in front of the A. Again, we'll talk about the various types of reflections. Lastly, let's pick a different color. What color? This color. Vertical shifts. That's up and down. They are very automatic. That's your, if you're adding, you're moving up. If you're subtracting, you're moving down. Okay, so there are all of our color coordinations. Let's do some examples. All right, I labeled it A through whatever, so let's start with A of X. Okay, in A of X, I see a couple of things. The first thing I see is this inside transformation, a minus C. And I also see a vertical shift. Okay, so minus 1, that's to the right 1. I guess for reflections or do RF. Okay. So to the right 1, and the blue plus 2 is up 2. All right, let's move on to letter B. These will get tougher as we go along. All right, so I see a number out in front and a number inside. Okay, a number out in front is going to be our stretch or compression. A number inside is still going to be our left to right. All right. Now, the number outside of the parentheses is a 3. That is a number whose absolute value is greater than 1, right? The absolute value of 3 is 3. When we see a number that's greater than 1, even if it's negative, because the absolute value cancels it out, that is going to be a vertical stretch by 3. You're going to multiply your y coordinates by 3. We also have the plus 2. That's left 2. All right, let's do it. Ooh, I did those 2 out of order. My bad. However, if you messed up this way while you were graphing it, you would be fine. Really, the most important part is to do up and down last. That's what will mess you up. All right, let's continue. Ooh, this one has a lot in it. Now I see an inside, a +1. Why don't I just write it down as we go? So that is to the left one, because it's a plus. It's backwards. Okay. Next, I see a number outside my parentheses. It's a 1/2. So this 1/2 is smaller than 1. This is going to be a vertical compression by 1/2. So you'd multiply your y's by 1/2. There's also a negative outside. When there's a negative outside of the parentheses, this is a reflection over the x-axis. Right? You're going to multiply all of your y coordinates by -1. And lastly, we have -23. That's down 23. Okie dokie. Let's continue. All right, so now we have some absolute values. These are not power functions, but rules still apply. Now, as I'm looking at it, I see a negative in here. The first thing I need to do is factor it out, because I'm going to scroll over. Take a look at that f of x function. That b is factored out. So let's factor this bad boy out. I'm going to zoom in so it's easier for us to do it. All right, if I factor out a negative, I have x minus 3 left inside the absolute value. Whoops. Okay, now let's highlight. Okay, I have the inside -3. So that's to the right 3. I also have an inside negative. We're going to be reflecting over the y-axis. Alright, so this doesn't happen too often. It usually gets lost in the problem, but it happens from time to time, so I want to make sure to show that to you. And lastly, we have a +9, up 9. Wow, that was an ugly 9. We're going to try that 9 again. 9. Okay, let's move on to letter E. Alright, so this one's funky as well. I'm going to rewrite this too, because in our original function, x usually comes first. Okay, so this really is -x and +7, which means I'm going to have to factor out that negative. Okay, perfect. Now it's rewritten in a way that we can start identifying everything. Notice this is a radical function. Does it change the way I look at the transformations? Nope. All right. So we have a -7 on the inside. That's to the right 7. I have a minus on the inside. And that's a reflection over the y-axis. You're going to multiply all of your x's by, excuse me, x's by -1. That y is ugly. We're going to fix you, alright? Reflect over the y. And lastly, we have a -2. That's down 2. Okay. That's A through E. Let's move on to letter F. Okay. Now we have a number in front of x. So that's actually going to be a stretch or compression. Which one is it? So when it's inside, it's going to be a horizontal stretch or compression. If you noticed earlier when we went horizontally left and right, it was backwards. So instead of like a vertical stretch or compression, we'd be multiplying the so in a vertical stretch or compression, we multiply the y-coordinate. When we're talking about horizontal stretches and compressions, we're actually going to be dividing the x-coordinate. So everything about horizontal things is backwards. So if it's backwards, 3 is larger than 1. So actually, this is a horizontal compression. And you'd be dividing by 3. So it's actually a horizontal compression by 1/3. Okay. And we have a There's only plus 1 up here, which is up 1. Okay, that was funky. Let's try it again. All right. I see a bunch of stuff inside those parentheses in letter G. And I noticed that we can factor something out. And we actually kind of have to. We don't have a choice. If we want to talk about all the transformations, we need to make sure it's completely factored. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to factor the inside. I'm going to make these brackets so we don't get confused. So I don't get confused. All right. Okay, there we go. Now we can talk about the transformations. Let's start on the very, very, very inside. We have -2. And that's to the right 2. Then we have a 2 right here. Again, everything's backwards. This is a horizontal compression by 1/2. I'm going to pause there a second. Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. Dividing by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3, etc. Okay. Next, we have this 3 on the outside of the brackets. That's going to be a vertical stretch. Oh no, what did I just do? Okay, everything's fine. Vertical stretch by 3. And last and definitely not least, we have down 456. All right, let's take a look at letter H. Okay, so this is going to be a rational function. We don't need to factor anything. Let's get started. We don't have any parentheses on the inside, but we do have this denominator. That -3 is to the right 3. This +2 is up 2. Okie dokie. Last one. Whoa. Okay, so this -2, I'm just going to space that out a little bit. It's on the outside of the root. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in there. I need to factor out that -1/2. You can't really factor out the -1/2 out of 3, so it might look a little funky. It might not. Remember, I don't know what I was going to say there. Let's just get started. I don't know what we're supposed to remember, but we must remember. Okay, 4. I'm going to take out the negative and the 1/2. Okay, so I know I'm going to have a minus because negative times negative when you multiply gives you a positive. Okay, now think to yourself, what should I multiply 1/2 by to get 3? Well, I need to multiply 1/2 by 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. You can, that's I guess a little more complicated way of thinking about it. You can also do 3 divided by 1/2. 3 divided by 1/2 will give you 6. So when we factor a number out, it's kind of like we're dividing each term by the number, just like when we distribute, we're multiplying. All right, I think maybe that's what I meant to say earlier. Let's include the I of x. And let us label these transformations. Okay, -6 on the inside. To the right, 6. The 1/2 right here. Okay, it's a 1/2. It's on the inside. It's horizontal. It's a stretch. It's a horizontal stretch by 2. Because if we're dividing by 1/2, that's the same as multiplying by 2. Then we have this 4 on the outside. That's a vertical stretch by 4. We have a negative on the inside. Inside is horizontal. So reflection over the y-axis. You're going to multiply all your x's by -1. And last, and certainly not least, actually, I don't know. Maybe it is the least. It's always last. Down 2. I don't want to judge any numbers. They're all great. Okay, I'm going to zoom out for a second in case you wanted to take a look at this. here are all our problems. I hope this was helpful as you work on your work at home. And don't forget to click on that link in the description if you would like a copy of my transformations cheat sheet. Have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. I'll see y'all later. Bye.